My update for today is again focused on trying to shrink this. I'm not sure it's shrinking very good. Oh yeah, there it goes. Still trying to get my remote control programmed effectively. This is the old version. This is a TTGO board. These are just some potentiometers I put on there to, mimic what a good joystick situation might be. This is another version of it with a 3D printed case. It's not done, but it's just printed to get some sizing down as a reminder. These little guys are LEDs. These are batteries. They would drive this. I put a temperature and pressure and humidity sensor on there, just I think for chuckles and to have some data coming in to practice passing data back and forth. So we got some software in the GIST. Let's see if I can get to that. I don't know, is that link going to be this? Let's see. I guess so. Put this in the chat if that'll go. Yeah, it will. So this particular code would sit on the server or the laptop, which would be on the tractor. And at a high level, it just passes data back and forth. It's just test code at the moment to try to get it working. And then the code that sits on that would be this code, which I'll put in the chat. And the video that I shared with Jeff basically walks through showing you first boot up the client or the remote control. It just sits there and waits. This is not all perfect by any stretch. It's just what I've got working so far. Just again, to educate myself and to sort of work out some basic kinks. And then if I plug in the tractor or the TTGO board, LoRa board, that would sit on the tractor, it starts receiving from, it says from tractor, but in this case, it's actually from the remote control, and it's sending some data back. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that is on the TTGO that would be sitting on that's the client. So it's receiving something and it's sending something, and you can see the RSSI. And then if I forward this a little bit, I'll show you a screen of what's sitting on the. So this happens to be the Ubuntu laptop. And it shows, hey, I got something from the client and here's the RSSI, and I'm sending, in this case, it looks like packet number 27 in that frame. And so that's, I mean, where I'm at is I've got these two devices sending and receiving data back and forth, and the code is out here on GIST, and getting this structure worked out was an interesting challenge because I'm not as good as programmer as Jeff, and you got to use that structure and this statement to convert it before you actually send it. So that was a little bit of interesting code to do. This is the code that will read the BMP device. This is some sample code to control the LEDs. This is some code to get the OLED working on the board, which is, if I can get back to a shot of the board. So that OLED, which hasn't been completely initialized, is yeah, that wasn't working. All I got was a big white blob, so I got something to do to fix that. And this is startup code to get the LoRa working, which because the pins are all unique to that board, needed to do that. Set the frequency, set the power. I set the power down to 5 just to not annoy the neighbors if they happen to be using LoRa. And that's just to initialize the temperature sensor. So anyway, that's where I'm at. A little bit of progress on getting them to talk, a little bit of progress on moving from a glued together styrofoam holder to something a little bit more organized. Need to get my 18650 cells wired up and feeding that so it can be transportable. Clean up the OLED. So yeah, a little bit of progress. I'm happy with the progress, but still lots more coding to do.
After you set your transmit power down, did you get an idea of how much range you've got on that?
Not yet. The screen showing I mean, literally these things are 2 feet apart, and I'm getting the RSSI of -69, which is not that great. So I don't think at 5 the range is going to be, very good. Because I think a larger negative number is good, right?
I was thinking it was the other way around, but I don't know.
I've forgotten.
A quick way to find out is pick up your one laptop and carry it to the other side of the room and then see if the number gets more negative or more positive. When you do that, that'll tell you fairly quick.
So that's where I'm at. A little bit of progress.
About the only thing I did, I went out to my garage and looked at my lawn tractor and took all the junk off the top and slid it out in the driveway. And then I got distracted trying to clean out some of the stuff in my garage to throw it away. And when I started looking at the lawn tractor, I have to put the gas tank back on, and I decided I should go ahead and put the steering bracket and the motor on and try to get that mounted relatively permanently. And I realized a while back that I built that bracket with the gas tank off, and there's a rod that comes up that's the clutch for the blade. So there's just a rod that runs up basically parallel to the steering shaft, and it has a handle sticking out, so you you can push it on and off to either start the blade or stop the blade. And the problem was when I took the gas tank off, that just fell forward. So I had plenty of room there to work, but unfortunately now when I go to put it back together, the bracket that I made is in the way of that thing. So I had to figure out what to do about that. So I pulled out my angle grinder and ground off one of the braces on my bracket and knocked that off. And by looking at it, I think if I just move that back about an inch or so, then I think I can get that clutch rod to fit in where it needs to, and then still get the gas tank bolted on. And then I was going to move it back about an inch and re-weld it. And I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and drill holes in it right now and just bolt it together. There's no sense start welding yet until I figure out if everything's going to fit. And then, so I'll get all that put back together. And then hopefully, I still got to figure out how to get that bracket to keep it from turning and keep it from falling off. So I need to put some more braces on there somewhere. And then I can move on with that. And then for the transmission in the back, I just got to put the RC servo back on it and do some playing around there. Now I realize there's another problem on my transmission, because on one like yours that has the foot pedals, they decided when they built it, they would have it so you press on a foot pedal, it would pull on the control arm on the side of the transmission and either push it forward or push it backward. And when you take your foot off, then there's a spring return to a stopped position. And at one time I was asking, because when everybody was talking about that, I asked Matt where the spring is, and apparently the spring is inside of the transmission itself. So I think what you have right now is you've got your RC servo pulling on that arm, so you're constantly working against that spring. And that's because I was asking one time, could you just take that off? And Matt says, no, he thinks that spring's inside the transmission. So you'd have to physically tear it apart and pull that spring out, which I wouldn't advise somebody do that. If everything's working great, I wouldn't start tearing your stuff apart. So anyway, mine does not have that. I do not have a spring return. So I can just push it forward and it'll stay there, or pull it back and it'll stay there, which now I have it brings up a safety concern. Because if I'm not paying attention, I start the engine, it's going to take off and start driving. So I have to figure out how to prevent the engine from starting if that's not in the stopped or neutral position. And once I get the RC servo on there, it's got the feedback wire coming off that. So I could theoretically, if I were to put a relay between the starter solenoid and everything else and control that from a microcontroller, that it can say, if the transmission is not at the stopped position, don't enable the starter circuit. And that would prevent me from doing it. The other thing on mine, since I didn't have the foot pedal, I just had an arm sticking up out of the fender. And if you push the arm forward, you drive forward. If you pull it back, you go back. And it turns out if the thing is forward and you put your foot on the brake, they've got some kind of fancy mechanical stuff that when you put on the foot on the brake, it snaps it back to the stopped position. Whether you're going forward or going backward, it'll snap it back to that position. So they've got some mechanical interlock there. And in order to make sure you do that, they've got a switch on the brake pedal. So before you can start the engine, I think you have to have the blade clutch has to be turned off. You have to be sitting on the seat, and you have to have your foot on the brake before the starter will run on mine. And that way they guarantee you, if you have to be holding the brake down, that also mechanically moves the transmission back to a stopped position. So that's how they got away with it before. So I just now have to figure out some way on mine so I don't accidentally start it and have it take off and do any damage or get away from me or whatever.
Well, that sounds like good progress. I know for my startup process, on the back of mine, I have a lever that disengages the transmission entirely. It's designed for if you want to push your tractor around by hand. And
mine has that too.
That's just a part of my safety process to start it up. But then again, I'm thinking it will be a long day from here, or a long time from now, before I start it electronically or digitally, if I can say it that way. I'm just going to manually start it so that I can be in complete control about starting it and engaging the transmission. But
I plan to manually start mine too, but the problem is if I'm not paying attention, I can start the engine, and depending if I didn't set the transmission in the proper place ahead of time, it's gonna come back to bite me. So I just wanted something to disable the starter if it's not in a safe position.
that's cool.
And you mentioned that little lever on the back, you pull it out to disengage the transmission. You could actually put a switch on that, put a micro switch or something on. So if you don't pull that out, the switch knows that you haven't done that, and then you can actually disengage your starter.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So if that's what you always do is pull that out ahead of time, that would make sure you don't forget, because if it's just a matter of going through the steps and you're not paying attention, you're going to forget to do it sometime, and you're going to have a problem.
That's a great idea. It's a little bit of a dangling thing. I mean, it's got a lot of play in it. I guess I could take that play out and install that micro switch, as you said. That's a great idea.
And I think the play that's in that isn't a big deal. You push it in all the way or you pull it out all the way, and somewhere in between it switches. So if you got a switch that says, the thing is pushed in all the way, then it's not safe. But if it's pulled out, so it's either you pull it out all the way and it activates a switch to say it's safe, or you have a switch at the other end. So it basically knows the position, whether you've attempted to pull that out or not, is what you've got there.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And the other thing is I could put something on, I could put, say, a switch or something on my transmission. So when it's in the stopped position, it activates the switch just to feed into my circuit to know that it's either in position or not. So that's just more things I thought of. And fortunately, I thought of this before I tried starting the thing this time, because right now the rod is just down there, and it's wherever it's at right now, because it doesn't return to a stopped position. So right now it's just the arm is in some position, probably like 50% full speed or maybe full speed forward right now. So it's good that I thought about that, because that would have been very surprising to have that take off. In order to stop it, the only way I can do it is turn off the key switch. And right now the key switch is going to be dangling. I guess I'd be hanging on to it if I started it, because you have to turn the key switch to start the thing. So if I don't absentmindedly drop that, because if I drop it now, it's just, I had to take it off the dashboard, so it would just hang in there. So that would be another problem, that it would start up and surprise me, and now the thing's going to be driving forward, and it would get ugly, because I don't have any kind of an e-stop switch stuck on there, and that's another thing. I have to put an e-stop and figure out how to kill the engine with that. So that'd be another thing. I really should do that before I do anything else, but I don't know if I will or not.
Well, now that's recorded, so it's you committed yourself.
Also, it's recorded, so if this thing runs over me and kills me, everybody will know why. It's because they'll know I was too lazy to do it right.
Well, that's what's going on for me.
That's pretty much the extent of my progress. I was going to pull off the flywheel cover and see what I had for room to mount those Hall effect sensors, and I just haven't got around to that. I got distracted by figured out. I thought, well, I should go ahead and figure out how to mount that steering motor first, and then once I get the steering motor, then I'll put this RC servo back on the transmission. And just putting those two on doesn't solve my problem. Then I have to hook up for the steering motor, I have to hook up the power driver and a microcontroller to feedback on that. And then the RC servo, I have to get some kind of a microcontroller in that to control the position of that. And like these things I'm saying, it'd be good to know all the different have some kind of safety features built in there, so I'm not creating a total mess right up front.
The other thing that it's been a time suck for me is I'm trying to share my screen here. Where's the share button? Oh, yeah, there it is. So on my, I'm planning on using a laptop on my tractor, running Ubuntu 20. I thought it would be good to be able to use Google Remote Desktop to remote into it. And at the moment, I've got that software installed, but I get this black screen when I remote into it. And yeah, getting that fixed has been a pain in the butt. There's this suggestions that it's this the issue is something called pulpit, and they got these series of allows that are supposed to fix my problem, but at the moment I can't Google in, I can't remote desktop into my laptop using Google remote desktop. So that's another challenge I'm trying to fix. While I'm working on my other code. I think we've lost you, Jeff. Oh, you're back.
So I guess that's all I have, other than, I was thinking about, since I'm gonna have to work on my steering, I thought, well, number one, I want a potentiometer on my steering motor itself, on the power steering motor. And then it might be nice to have some other sensors on there, if nothing else, just for testing, so I can verify that when I turn the steering motor, that I can verify that the wheels turn a certain amount. And I could even put, like, say, at the two end stops of my steering, either put micro switches, or now I've got these fancy Hall effect sensors, just glue some magnets on, put the Hall effect sensors, just so if nothing else, I can keep track. It's also nice to, if you could monitor the steering in multiple places, then if something breaks or falls off, you can have something that's constantly watching for that. So it says, I want to turn the steering motor this amount, and if you don't see the wheels moving, then have something that tracks that, just to keep track of what's going on. So it might just be handy to have other things there to tell me what's going on. So if I put, say, switches or Hall effect sensors at both end stops to know if I've gone too far, and then I've got some of those, everybody's using that Delphi ride height sensor, or whatever they're calling that. Kyler was using that on steering. Matt had one that he broke, and I've got some that they're actually out of a Corvette. They called it a headlight level sensor or something. It's a slightly smaller version, but I think it's got a built-in analog Hall effect sensor. It's got an arm sticking out with a. Do I have one right here? I just saw one now. I forgot where it's at. But anyway, it looks like those Delphi ones. If I just bolt it on the frame somewhere, then I can have the arm, track the control arm on the steering. So that'd give me yet another feedback mechanism there to see what's going on. So I'm just thinking I could add this extra stuff in there just to keep track of what's going on, and possibly, if nothing else, then I go make all my plots and say, well, I'm turning like this. What's the angles here, and what's, how's it responding or whatever. So that's something else I've been thinking about, but I haven't actually done any of that yet.
Those would be great additions. Okay, I think we can stop recording.
Okay.